From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hello, welcome to the show. I'm Ken Davis here on Chicago Newsroom. Well, we're in it now, aren't we? In just 1 month and a couple of days, we're going to conclude 20 elections in Chicago. 19 ward runoffs and that other one between those two guys we like to call Rahm and Chewy. I am happy to report that beginning today, we're going to be adding a second weekly show for the election period here on Chicago Newsroom. We're going to focus on the mayoral race in our regular show, like right now, and then we'll get into some in-depth conversation about the ward races in our second editions, and we'll give you details later on in the show about how you can find and watch those shows. So that's big news for us, and we're very happy about it. A lot has been said already about Emanuel and Garcia's race, but if there is one overarching theme, it seems to be that we are, fiscally speaking, close to your, pick your analogy, perched on the edge of a cliff or days away from becoming Detroit. Well, if that's true, can we force our candidates to talk about it? Chicago tried electing a powerful, connected, tough, no-nonsense mayor, and he talked the talk of financial reform. But in the end, has he really been able to convince the electorate or our elected representatives to really seriously take a look at cutting budgets and contracts? Well, then you get to the point of, does anybody really believe that a different candidate, one so openly and enthusiastically supported by organized labor, is going to be any more effective about staving off this supposed fiscal Armageddon that we're all supposed to be so worried about? What is a mayor to do? Raise taxes, cut benefits? Well, we say we need that, but then we tell our officials not to do it because we're just so crazy, us electorates. Today, to talk about what we really want, now that we have this amazing opportunity for a one-on-one debate about the future of our city, are two of my favorite longtime journalists who've been around for a while observing the city, and they're here to help us unpack all of this and get a better understanding of it all. Ethan Michaeli making a triumphant return to Chicago Newsroom. And thanks, by the way, for hanging in this seat for a while there,
really
while I was off getting my cataracts done. Glenn Reedus is joining us for the first time, and Glenn, it's wonderful to have. First time with me, right. Second time Ethan brought you here, and I'm really happy to have you here to be talking about a couple of the wards in our second show and talking about the mayor right now. So let's get started, and I would like to start with what is becoming a kind of a philosophical debate among a lot of people who watch all this stuff. For the longest time, we heard, and I was saying, that the race for this second round is going to be fought in the African American communities because that's where a lot of votes are available to be picked off. Yesterday, Dan Mihalopoulos in the Sun-Times kind of came out with his own version of it, saying, yeah, but what about that 100,000, 150,000 white people, or they're presumed to be white people who live in predominantly white wards on the Northwest Side, who just sat the last election out. They're going to come in big numbers, and they will probably come in for Rahm Emanuel. Sort it out for us, Glenn. Be wise.
Dan's speculating, that's it.
Well, we're all speculating.
But no, I completely disagree. I think that the votes to be had are in the African American community. There are about 1 million people who did not vote on February 24th. Yeah. And of those, when you take those predominantly African American wards, about 40%, close to 400,000 people are available. So it's going to be a matter of which camp can mobilize and get to those voters. I think that the mayor has the challenge of addressing his base, which this time is not the African American community, and trying to make some inroads or move back into the African American community. I just don't think there's the time to be able to do both.
Well, if we, I'm sorry, Ethan, you can jump in anytime here. If we assume, and I think it's been conventional wisdom, that the Latino vote was larger than normal, and so therefore there would be fewer there would be fewer Latinos who sat it out. So if 40% of the people who sat it out were black, then aren't about another 40% of them probably the so-called white people? I mean, so isn't it really almost like a kind of an even fight here at
There are
this
a
point?
lot of assumptions in those percentages, and I think that Dan, Glenn was right to say that he's speculating. Dan is an excellent reporter when it comes to investigating corruption and finding the links between contractors and City Hall and government officials,
Charter schools
and charter schools.
Right.
But none of us, can see the future, and it's I think dangerous to speculate under the best of circumstances.
Yeah.
In this case, there are a lot of moving parts. Why did people stay home on the Northwest side? These were expected to be Rahm Emanuel's key voters. If they stayed home, it may be because they were voting with their silence rather than
voting against him.
Yeah.
And voting. Oh, I certainly agree with that. And also there's another cohort of people who just said, who even went out and voted for Garcia because, and I would put myself in this category, people who were saying, hey, I really want to see a runoff election. Regardless of what the outcome of the second election is, we want a one-on-one, so we're going to vote against Rahm Emanuel to do that. I admit that I was one of those people. But what happens with those people now? And that refers to all Chicagoans.
Well, I think another one of those moving parts is that when you look at, say, people in Lawndale and people in Woodlawn, their interests are going to be more similar than when you talk about someone in Beverly and on the North Shore. So if they didn't come out before, I don't know what would change their minds this time.
That's a really interesting question. I mean, is it possible that, I think we've all been working from a central assumption that a lot of people who didn't vote last time are going to come out this time and vote? Maybe
I think the campaigns they realize that's where they have to focus. I mean,
Right.
1 million voters just sitting around,
Yeah.
that's tough to ignore.
Yeah.
I mean, the Garcia campaign in the last few days has been focusing on registration, which of course is a very logical tack for them to take because they can, the Latino community is historically under-registered and underrepresented at the polls. This is maybe a chance to really increase those numbers. Now they'll have to shift gears, right? March 10th is the date that registration closes. So as that date gets closer, they're going to have to shift gears into a convince the voters that are coming out and they get out the vote on election day effort. So I think that it's not going to be easy for, I wouldn't at this point say that either candidate has a distinct advantage, but I feel like this first round was essentially a referendum on Emanuel. And a lot of people, frankly, voted against him. Whether they voted against him thinking that they might change their minds in the runoff, or whether they voted against him thinking that that they just wanted anybody but him. This was a referendum on Emanuel, and I have to say, I don't think that he's quite gotten it yet, that he's lost the initiative. Garcia has now emerged as someone that people are considering.
They're looking at.
And it's a plausibility question. It's an effort, and it's a can this guy be my mayor? And so far, Garcia is passing the test. He hasn't made any missteps. He appears to be a politician with experience, with turn Senator Mark Kirk's phrase the other way. He does seem to have the gravitas to sit in the 5th floor of City Hall. It's really the establishment folks that are apoplectic about the prospect of a Garcia as mayor.
Well, just to spend one more moment looking back before we look forward, I would say that I hate this thing of like putting these sections of the city into racial terms this way because it's so much more complex than that. But to the extent that we'll permit ourselves to do that, the two things that I took away from it were I was surprised that the African American vote for Rahm Emanuel was as high as it was. I would have expected it to have dropped more than it did, and I was surprised that the so-called white vote was either as stay-at-home or as low as it was. I mean, both those things were a little bit surprising to me.
Emanuel has worked hard to alienate many different constituencies.
Perfected it.
You know, I'll just give you an example that when it comes to the airport noise issue on the northwest side, folks there who were probably inclined to vote for Emanuel received not just no response in the kind of traditional sense of a form letter, but I mean no response in terms of no one from the mayor's office will even write them back an email. These are folks, frankly, these are middle class, tax-paying people who expect their representatives to represent them, and they expect to get a hearing. Now, I'm not saying that any politician could really do anything for them, right? They can't make the planes quieter. They can't
move the runways now.
No, and they can't at this point, you know, restrict air traffic to a degree that it would hurt the O'Hare's ability to serve as a hub. But all that said, you can still meet with people. You can still show some compassion. You can still say, I'm sorry I can't do anything for you. And half the people will leave the room and say, well, at least he met with us.
Right.
Daley-esque.
Exactly. That was a Richard M. Daley and even a Richard J. Daley tactic, is you meet with people just to show that level of respect, tell them you're not going to do anything for them, and understand that half the people will appreciate it.
I was going to say, one of the many things that Rich Daley did not teach his young master was that you have to at least appear to be concerned about the community. You have to go out and let them punch at you once in a while and sit there and say, oh, this is terrible, and we'll have to see if we can do something about that.
That's right.
You know, but interestingly enough, I had the opportunity to host one of the forums, the mayoral forums. Emanuel didn't choose to come, but the day before that mayoral forum in Jefferson Park, where I live and where you can sit on your back porch and actually wave to the people as they fly over your yard, the day before that forum, Chuy Garcia agreed that he would meet with the fair organization and put together a really kind of pretty logical thing of things that might be able to be done, and said that he would meet with everybody. So in other words, he said and did the right things. And I actually wonder, when I look at some of these maps of how Chuy Garcia did out on the northwest side, if maybe some of this wasn't a kind of a late response to that.
I think it was. I think some of the light blue that you see in terms of Emanuel's votes is also an issue. You know, as you know, elections are not won in terms of each ward or each precinct representing the city as a whole. You're talking about some precincts where you're going to get 90% of the vote and other precincts where you're only going to get 10%. The key is to have your people come out in the wards where you have support to offset those other wards where you won't have support. So when you see a kind of soft blue here for Emanuel, that means he's in big trouble.
Yeah.
And when we could go back to the point about him ignoring people, I understand the PR aspect of key messages, but I was at 3 forums that the mayor attended, no matter what the question. The same canned answers that turned people off. As though you're not listening to the moderator, and you're not telling me what I need to hear. So he's, like I say, he's perfected that.
So what do you guys make of well, let's talk about for a minute the new Rahm Emanuel commercial, which I find just astounding as somebody who's worked in campaigns and has worked, I've worked in city PR for a long time, and it's just, I just don't quite understand how you can turn on a dime like that. Now all of a sudden he has this very soft focus thing that I presume is trying to make us pretend that he's in his living room or something, but he's not.
But it's still all about him. It's all about, I, can be a tough guy. I
should listen.
Yeah.
But I termed it Lucifer to Larry. Because, and who believes that? That he's been so abrasive going back to his congressional days, and that now, a month before an election, I'm a different guy.
I remember when he was elected to Congress, and I think that he skipped, I may be wrong about this, I know he skipped almost all of his election night events. There were election night events in Chicago. He was always in Washington. I know he was there for most of them, if not all of them. And that just says something to the voters. Every politician knows that people have a choice.
Yeah.
They can vote for you, or they can vote for someone else, or they can stay home. And you have to show some level of appreciation. He never seemed to even take it seriously that the electorate had a choice in these cases. And I always thought that if I didn't live in his district, but if I did, I would have been offended.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, here's to me what's the big thing on the table today. The Sun-Times editorial board and the August Chicago Tribune editorial board have been really kind of ticked off with us. They have been lecturing us for the last few weeks about, look, we tried to tell you that
Us
there
being
is
the electorate.
there is only one issue. There is only one issue. We spend too much money, and we've got to cut the budget, and we've got to get the. And here we've got a guy who has been trying for 4 years to get you people to listen, and you won't listen. And now look, there's a possibility that some labor leader endorsed guy is going to come in, and things are going to go so far to hell that we're just giving up on you. I think I read that editorial just a couple.
I've lived in a couple of other 2 newspaper cities. I've never seen both of them be a PR arm for the incumbent like these guys are now.
The thing that I want to I've really been trying to get my hand around is this is real, isn't it? I mean, these deficits, these pension shortfalls are real. There is a crisis. Is there not?
There is a crisis, Ken, but it's not the crisis that people think, and it's not a crisis that doesn't have a lot of low-hanging fruit in terms of opportunities to make things better. You can say that that the city is facing a lot of fiscal problems, but then when you see a $20 million no-bid contract go out from the Chicago Board of Education to a clout-connected consulting firm to train principals, you start to ask yourself, how many contracts of that size and that nature are there littering the city budget? When you see that Emanuel has been able to make very limited progress, if any progress at all, on these issues, despite a lot of fee raising, tax raising, and despite his assertions, raising property taxes. Yes, the city council has not raised property taxes, but the Board of Education and the Park District have. So if you are a homeowner, taxpayer in Cook County, you have, in the city of Chicago, you have seen.
It's funny, he said he didn't raise my taxes.
That's right.
Sure,
Well, I think the other issue is that public sector budgets are simply very difficult to understand. So
Purposefully, perhaps.
There would be a greater impact if, you can remember when the city used to collect garbage twice a week.
Yeah.
So if they said, if Rahm said, well, garbage collection is going to be every other week, everybody'd be up in arms. But when you talk about the budget, it's, I guess so. But when we look at that whole financial situation, I see these as extremely extraordinary times, and nobody voted for someone who can fix this. So it's time to rearrange everything, call in the financial cavalry. I don't know exactly who that is. I mean, bank presidents, top 6 accountants, accounting firms, but we need somebody other than the folks we have elected to make some headway with this.
An objective opinion.
Objective and informed and non-political.
I think that's wise. I think also we have to let's step back a second. We've heard this before. If the non-establishment candidate, in 1983 it was Harold Washington, and it was very clearly tinted in racial terms. It was, before it's too late, that the city will fall apart if an African American mayor takes over. They said it was Harold Washington in particular, but that's how people heard it. Today also we hear, if Chuy Garcia takes over, this city will become Detroit. I heard it over and over again from establishment folks. The reality is, though, when you get past the celebrity smokescreen, Rahm Emanuel has been a profligate spender who has not done anything about the fiscal issues, or has done very marginal moves about the issues. Chuy Garcia at Cook County has been a responsible fiscal steward. They have been able to solve most of their fiscal issues without raising taxes or without raising taxes and fees much.
Actually, with a reduction in their taxes
Right.
at the county board, and also, I mean, it must be said that when things got tough for Rahm Emanuel, he basically gave the police and the fire departments their contract exactly as they wanted.
The teachers too.
And the teachers too. So you could almost say this is a mayor who just caves into organized labor.
Well, he loses the fights to organized labor because he disrespects organized labor, and organized labor is strong, and especially in a city like Chicago.
So maybe what we need is a mayor who's able to sit down with some gravitas at the table in a respectful way with with organized labor and all the other, and the banks, as you say, and everything else, and say, okay, what are we going to do? Let's you put something on the table, I'll put something on the table.
That's part of it. But let's also look at the pension issue. You have a lot of people making six-figure pensions, many of whom never even worked for the city. These are people who have gamed the system, doctors, lawyers, other folks there are even attorneys who made a career suing the city, who use that as a way to get a six-figure pension.
Yeah.
The pension board has the authority to rule against these people, to cancel their pensions, to reduce their pensions. They can do all that. They have that power. Emanuel has been reluctant to empower the pension board to do that.
Yeah.
You can guess why is that there are a lot of politically connected people who have those pensions.
But you know, every time
manage the funds.
every time we have these conversations, though, I go back and I watch the show and I say, you were not responsible enough. You did not hammer the fact that over the last 30, 40 years, politicians have just uniformly refused to pay their side of the bargain. That the employees, the city employees, all put their money in, and now we're at the point where, of course, something's got to give. But about the only thing that can give is the people who are legitimately getting their pensions from.
Well, that's
from
always the way that the establishment would like us to see it. They'd rather that we take our money as opposed to theirs. It's not that, you know.
Oh, Eitan, you're so cynical.
No, I don't even think they're that subtle about it. I think
No,
that
they're not subtle at all.
they're making the argument directly. I don't. You know, these are the pension issues that I just raised. These are not secrets. These are things that are well known. These
Have
are
been
things,
known for decades.
Yeah, that's right. And we haven't. You know, we as the electorate haven't done anything about it, and the people in office haven't done anything.
But
about
do you agree that something has to be done?
Without question.
Do you?
I
mean, you sound like you're saying we could just keep going for another 10, 15 years on the same path.
Well, no, I'm saying that what could be done is different than reducing pensions for, you know, the people not making six-figure, not
people who work for 30 years picking up our garbage,
yeah,
teaching our kids.
I think if we went person by person through the pension system, rooted out, you know, Mayor Daley, who's getting a $400,000 a year pension. Not that I begrudge him a pension, but that's an extravagant one. And folks like that, we could go a long way towards solving the problems. By the way, in Detroit, a lot of the pension problems could have been solved the same way. Their pension board also was in the habit of large giveaways to politically connected folks, and that caused a lot of trouble for them.
I've been seeing for the last couple of days, for the first time, I've been seeing people legitimately raising the question, maybe Chicago should just declare bankruptcy and then get out from underneath all this stuff.
I'm told there are many legal obstacles to making that happen, that the state of Illinois has put in place a framework that would make that very difficult. But you know, this is Chicago. We've got an unlimited future.
But and the differences are so vast. I mean, I lived in Southeast Michigan for 28 years, and I mean, we've got one bad mayor who we can identify why he's doing bad things versus the one who could get out, and that's not cause to, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater and then pour some more water in to make sure the baby doesn't come back up.
All right. Well, in our remaining couple of minutes in this show, let's talk about. I would like to talk about the SEIU dispute a little bit. It's really kind of a tangential issue, but it's really something. It's like the SEIU said it's going to be putting a lot of. Well, the one faction of the SEIU wants to put money into Chuy Garcia, another is telling them they can't. What's going on with that?
Well, there's a national, the national union wants to put money behind Chuy Garcia.
Mm-hmm.
A local branch has been arguing against it even in court. The national branch wants to give $250,000 to Garcia's campaign. You know, the optics of this are a little bit unusual because there are family. There's one of the Balanoff members is Balanoff family members is in the national union, and another Balanoff family member is in Chuy Garcia's campaign.
Right.
So it looks a little bit unusual, but if you're able to get past that, I think that you see a history at SEIU of supporting progressive candidates, and so this would seem to me to be a case of the respective mayoral candidates influencing people at the union that they have influence with, and trying to. In other words, I think Emanuel is pushing the local to stop the national from giving money, and
they had the local has 14,000 city workers in it, and they seem to be happy with the mayor because they got what they want, right?
Are they happy with the mayor, or are they afraid to not do this?
That would be not be unhappy.
That's right.
To be unhappy. The latest polls, Ogden and Fry, who have been were incredibly accurate in the first campaign. They're saying that this thing is a dead heat. It's pretty incredible to see that.
This has been a major test, right? This is the first American politician of this era who has taken this precise way of doing business, in the sense that he has completely eschewed a street organization, completely eschewed the traditional way of doing politics in favor of a total money and television-driven campaign. Now, it has to be said, it worked for him several times as a fundraiser strategist for Bill Clinton, first of all, and Barack Obama later on. And he has, and previously for Mayor Daley as well. So Emanuel has that experience, and I can understand why he thought that would be a successful strategy. I think where he miscalculated was with likability and incumbency, in the sense that as he never worked on getting the voters to actually love him, and at the same time he never understood that with a track record, people will judge you on that as opposed to your personality.
And on
no question.
On that note, I'm sorry, Glenn. On that note, we have to end. We're already at the end of our show. However, there's going to be another show. We're going to keep these guys and do a second show to talk about ward races. So if you want to check this out right now, you can see where and when you'll be able to see that show here on CAN TV. And in addition to that, you can also watch CAN TV's fantastic election coverage, all kinds of ward races and forums and everything else at this address. And finally, on this address, you can watch us here on Chicago Newsroom anytime you want. So I hope you'll do all three of those things. I want to thank Ethan Michaeli for being here today, and thank Glenn Reedus for being here today. If you follow that link to where the other show is, you'll be able to watch this conversation just carry on into the discussion on the ward races. Did you get all that? You understand that? Okay. I'm Ken Davis. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you in a minute or two with another show. And we'll see you next week on Chicago Newsroom right here on CAN TV. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.